Okay, so hello, Stu. How are you?
Glenn, how are you?
Good. We have Liz Wheeler on with us in about 25 minutes. Liz is getting hammered from everybody. And I just want to stand up for my good friend Liz, who was invited to the White House. She didn't know why she was going. She had just come out on her show and in this show and on X and everything else disagreeing with the president on IVF. So she knew she was going to meet at the White House, I think, with J.D. Vance. But when the White House calls and says the vice president or the president would like to meet with you, you just go, okay. You don't say, I don't know. You say, okay. What does he want to talk to me about? You just say, okay. I say this from experience. I remember right around, well, it was 2004, 5, 6, somewhere in that area. And I was on CNN and I was ranting about how poorly the war was going and how poorly George Bush was handling things. And I said, George, wake up, dude. And I get off the air. I'm in my car. I'm driving home, and my phone rings. And Mr. Beck, yes, this is so-and-so from the White House. The president would like to see you in the Oval tomorrow morning. I didn't know what to do. I said, hang on, let me check. I didn't have a calendar or anything. I was such in shock. I put the phone away from my face, kind of looked at it, and then went, okay, what time? That works for me. You just go. That's what happened with Liz. She didn't know. She thought it was about IVF. She didn't know. So she gets there, and I'm going to have her tell the whole story, but she gets there, and they say to her and others who were also invited, the president, the vice president, Pam Bondi, and Kash Patel would like to see you in the Oval. Follow me. Okay. So at this point, she still doesn't know. She gets in, and Pam starts in on here is the release of the Epstein Files, but it's not what we thought it was. It's not what you thought it was, blah, blah, blah. And they say it's the Southern District of New York that is withholding the evidence. Okay, I've got a lot of questions at this point, but she takes it, and then she just reports on what happened, and she tells that story, and now she's getting hammered because you were in on it. You were just carrying water. No, I was invited to the White House. I'm telling you what happened. Now, let's just look at this for just a second, what happened. 2 days ago, well, let me start 6 months ago. Kash Patel, he was the interim director of national intelligence. He told me months and months and months ago, before he knew he was going to be part of this administration or Donald Trump was even going to have a chance to win, he told me, I saw the Epstein stuff, and it's vile and grotesque, and it's with the FBI. So he told me that before he knew he was going to be director of FBI. He then goes and delivers it to Pam Bondi. Okay. Well, he could release it, but perhaps he did that because the smart thing to do if you're going to release this is give it to the DOJ and say, are you going to prosecute any of these people? Have you seen this, and are you going to draw up prosecution papers for anybody? Because I'm going to release it. The president wants it released. So it'd be nice to have it released and then have you follow up and saying these things are going to be pursued and yada, yada. That's what I assumed. And I really assumed that when she was on Jesse Waters 2 days ago, and she, out of the blue, made an announcement that she was going to be releasing the Epstein Files. And she said, they've been sitting on my desk for almost a week. I got it on Friday. And she said, so tomorrow I'm going to release. She said, it's not all of it. But as I'm sitting there, you'll be amazed at the grotesque things that this guy was involved in. Something along that. I'm paraphrasing from memory. Well, wait. 12 hours later, you're in the Oval telling Liz Wheeler, it's not what we thought it was. But you just said last night you saw it, you've been vetting it, so you knew. Now, she's saying that she had directed the FBI, the Southern District of New York, to include everything and send it down to Washington so they had all of that information to include, and then the Southern District of New York, the FBI office in New York, did not do what they were supposed to do. The problem with that is it doesn't work with the timeline, really, because why did you hold it for 5 days if you didn't have that evidence? It doesn't make sense to me. But I think the president has earned my trust enough to say, Mr. President, this doesn't look good. What's happened here? And take them at their word until really today. Pam, you really have till today. I've never seen a reaction like this before, ever. The most popular president in my lifetime for a conservative, he has surpassed the way people felt about Ronald Reagan in some ways. He is seen as doing and changing things at lightning speed. It took us 6 years, at least 4, but 6 years for people to feel like this about Ronald Reagan. We liked him, we trusted him, but he hadn't accomplished everything, that we had hoped, really even all the way to the end of his administration. So Donald Trump is looked at differently, and I've never seen anyone as popular with their base on our side as Donald Trump. I've also never seen a group of supporters turn on somebody in the administration as fast as they did yesterday. When this came out and it was a nothing burger, and they heard what they heard about how this came together, people immediately said, I don't believe it. I think something's wrong. This is the same kind of crap that they always do. Somebody's protecting somebody. I want you to know I am really pissed. However, I'm not sure why what happened yesterday happened yet. So don't jump to any conclusions yet. But I'm just as skeptical as you are on this. When I saw how people are reacting in the last 12, 14, 16 hours, something else came to mind. We know that Kash Patel is walking into perhaps the most corrupt agency, besides the Department of Education, the most corrupt agency with guns and power out of all of them. The FBI has gone dark to the point where one of the whistleblowers was on with us yesterday, and I've got a quote from him as well, to the point to where people are saying, before he even got in, I'm not sure you can revive the FBI. It's so far gone. It is the army of the deep state. When we reached out last night to Steve Friend, the whistleblower from the FBI, do you believe the Southern District of New York FBI headquarters, is that a scapegoat or is that real? He said, quote, it's a coup attempt. They are flexing on Patel because they think they have enough people in HQ to control him. If that's true, we're now talking about an entirely different world. And in about 45 minutes, I'm going to lay out a case and use language I have never, ever used. And I'm going to be very, very clear But this is a turning point. If what Steve Friend and Pam Bondi and everybody else is saying happened, we should know from Pam Bondi, because by 8 a.m. Eastern this morning, time has passed. The Southern District of New York was ordered by her and the president to turn over all tapes, all records, all files on Epstein. We know that they have them or had them. They are refusing to turn it over. She gave the deadline of 8 a.m. If that deadline has passed and they are not sending in either FBI or whoever else, if the FBI is too corrupt to do it, if we're not sending someone in to begin making arrests in the Southern District of New York and shutting that revolutionary, radicalized agency down, I don't believe Pam Bondi. You don't mess around. This is an insurrection. This is a coup attempt if what she says is actually happening. And there are only three things. There are only three ways of what's happening. One, what the White House is saying. The Southern District of New York, the FBI headquarters, is out of control, and they have the documents, and they are thwarting justice. Either that's true, or, I guess the worst thing on the other side would be Pam Bondi and the Trump administration are protecting their friends that were on the planes and everything else. But I just don't believe that. I find that almost impossible to believe, but it is a possibility. It's what I would be saying if Joe Biden, if this same thing happened with Joe Biden, or honestly, any other administration of the past, I would say that's what's happening. Because that's what always happens. I'm having a very difficult time believing that that's what happened, because this administration has shown us in the last 40 days they are different. But are they this different? Time will tell. The other option that I see, if you're going to play three-dimensional chess, there is one other thing. And remember, I've said Donald Trump is playing five-dimensional chess. There is one other option that is, I think, not just possible, but perhaps probable as the answer on what just happened. You know, I want to say this before we go to Liz Wheeler. Stu and I are talking about what happened yesterday off the air, and I know Kash Patel quite well. I vouch for him. I know Dan Bongino quite well. I vouch for him. I've known him for years when he was the body man for Obama. I know Donald Trump quite well, and I vouch for him. The only player in this that I can't vouch for, and it's only because I don't personally know her, I've never had any interaction with her, is Pam Bondi. And that's the one piece that just doesn't feel right to me because of what she said on Fox the night before. It doesn't fit. Now, Liz Wheeler was invited to the White House. I told you a little bit of the story, but I'm going to give her the floor because I want Liz. You have the time that you need to tell this story, and I'm not going to interrupt you. But tell us exactly what happened, because you were there in the Oval Office yesterday.
I was, and thank you for having me this morning, Glenn. You know, people are very mad about what happened yesterday, and honestly, I don't blame them for being mad.
Right.
I am also very mad about what happened yesterday,
right?
Because we all expected to get the dirtiest dirt that we have ever gotten, the corruption of the government, the Epstein Files. We were promised this, we expected this, and we didn't get it.
Hang on just
and
a
when
second.
We didn't get it.
Hang on just a sec before, I'm sorry, I have to interrupt. But you have another reason because you were at the White House, but you didn't know that's what you were asked to be there for. So it looks like you're carrying water for the White House when you were just there and they call you in and say, oh, here's the deal. Correct? I feel like if it's
Somewhat,
nefarious,
yeah.
you've kind of been used.
Well, let me get to that because
Okay,
I think
all right.
when I tell the narrative story, it will make clear we weren't actually at the White House for that purpose.
Mm-hmm.
The Epstein Files is not why we were called in. We were called in to be given access to the most powerful people running our country. We met with almost every cabinet secretary, with the vice president, with the president himself, with all of the staff. We were given access as new media figures to replace the legacy media who has lied to us and demeaned us for all of these years. They are no longer going to be rewarded for doing that. So we were given the access to these people. But again, let me tell the narrative because
Okay, go ahead.
I want to make sure that everyone knows what happened because people are angry, and rightfully so, because they felt like they were subject to a bait and switch,
Mm-hmm.
which was not the intention, I think, on anyone's part, certainly not on my part. So we were invited to the White House, and we were in meetings with all of these different cabinet officials. And Pam Bondi, the Attorney General, comes into the room with Kash Patel, the FBI director, and they talk to us about what they've been doing. They give us some glimpses of what's happening behind the scenes. And Pam Bondi then brings a stack of these white binders, these infamous white binders that say Epstein Files Phase 1 on them. And when we saw these binders, of course, all of our jaws dropped, and we had the same assumption that this was going to be the juicy stuff. This was what we've been waiting for. And almost immediately, Pam Bondi says, wait a second, this is not juicy. You're not going to find in these binders what you think you're going to find in these binders. Let me explain. And immediately, she holds up that letter. I posted that letter on my X account. It was widely reported yesterday, and says, this binder is filled with 200 pages of Epstein files that was given to me by the FBI when I made the request, upon the request of the president, because he was fulfilling his promise, to declassify and release the Epstein files. I asked the FBI, give me the files. They brought me these 200 pages, put them on the desk, and assured me that this was all the files that they had. And Pam Bondi relates to us. She's like, it seemed weird. I smelled a rat because this is all the files. This is all we have. And she's like, and I repeatedly made requests to verify, are you sure this is all the files? And I was assured that this was all the files. And she's like, you will find in this binder that it's a nothing burger, that we have most of this information already declassified and redacted. I do believe there's a few things in there that hadn't, but it's nothing salacious. It's just a contact list of phone numbers. It's nothing. And flight logs, it's stuff we already have. And she said, the scandal is that last night, after it was clear that I was going to release these documents, I got contacted by a whistleblower from within the SDNY, which of course is part of the Department of Justice, part of the FBI. And this whistleblower told me that the SDNY was hiding potentially thousands of more documents about Epstein because they did not want her to release it.
Okay.
Now, this, of course, if true, is the scandal of the century.
Yes.
That there are deep state agents, swamp creatures in the swamp, in the FBI, in the SDNY, that are defying the President of the United States, defying the Attorney General, defying the Director of the FBI. That is breathtaking. I'm at a loss for words in how breathtaking this is to see the swamp. Now, you and I know, Glenn, everyone with us today knows that just because you cut off the head of the snake, just because you replace the top political appointees at an agency, it doesn't remove immediately all of those who would wish to subvert the will of the president. That takes time.
Yep.
And so the fact that we have concrete evidence in the form of this tangible binder that they gave this to Pam Bondi and told her, this is it, this is the smoking gun, when it is a nothing burger, that is a huge story. The entire SDNY should be fired. This place should be absolutely razed.
I agree.
So put a pin in that for a second. That's what happened in the secure briefing room at the White House. We met with we went into the Oval Office. We talked to President Trump. We talked to Secretary of State Marco Rubio. We talked to HHS Secretary RFK Jr. And then, of course, we weren't allowed to have our phones on us during this time in the West Wing. They were in a secure box downstairs. We were told that, we needed to leave this secure briefing room because the UK Prime Minister was coming and they were going to take us out the back of the White House and downstairs to get our phones. We were, of course, really excited because we had just gotten a coin from the president. personally, and he was showing us the portraits in the Oval Office. I mean, it's a surreal experience to visit this central place of power, and we were really honored to have been there, as I think anyone would be. So we go out back, excited to get our phones, because as soon as we get these phones, we're going to dive into these binders. We know that there's nothing really in them, but we have this letter, this huge story to break that previously would have been given to the legacy media, but it was given to us about the SDNY. But as we're going out the back door, we're rushed a little bit by White House staff, and I personally found this funny because I'm a history nerd. We're told, hurry, the British are coming,
Right.
because we needed to be out of the way of the hallway for the UK Prime Minister. Now, being the political nerds that we are, we all thought that was really funny. When's the last time someone shouted the British are coming in the White House? But once we get outside, we see that there's a gaggle of press, essentially in the bushes to the side of the White House. And the looks on their faces, so sour, so dour, so astonished to see us, because it wasn't a publicly announced meeting per se. And they were kind of like, what the heck are you guys doing here? And so we were, again, giddy from having been in the Oval Office, having just come out of a meeting with RFK where he was telling us some remarkable things he's working on. And they were curious about what we were holding. Now, this is a very important part of the story. We had not been told up to that point that there was any sort of embargo on this information. It was our impression at that moment that within about 2 minutes, we would be able to break the story of the SDNY stonewalling Pam Bondi. And so when the media was so sour and bitter that we had gotten this binder, yes, we were kind of laughing at them. We were holding up the binders in defiance, saying, you know what? You've been relegated to the bushes because you lie and you smear and you gaslight the American people, and we are the media now. And that was the background of that picture. Now, within about 2 minutes of that picture being taken, we were told, please don't report on the binder itself or the story about the SDNY until 3:30 in the afternoon, because they didn't want the press conference between Donald Trump and the UK Prime Minister to be solely focused on the SDNY Epstein Files story. So all of a sudden, we are in this situation where the press has gotten photos of us with these binders that appear to be real Epstein Files, and yet we knew that they were not. And we begged for the embargo to be lifted. The process of that embargo being lifted was frankly botched up. That should have been, I mean, it was an error on the part of the White House not to allow us to go ahead and do that. We, of course, were being respectful of that embargo because we were just given an exclusive story. But what happened then is pictures of us holding the binders were the only things that we were allowed to post at that moment. But we thought we'd be able, within about 5 minutes of those posts, just getting people's attention, to tell what the real story is.
Right.
And yet the embargo wasn't lifted. And so it created this situation. And I cannot even tell you how frantic I felt in this situation, Glenn, because it appears to be a bait and switch. And my goodness, that's the last thing that was ever intended. I was frantic behind the scenes telling the White House, you have to let me tell this story. You have to let me release this. Do you know what this looks like publicly? But unfortunately, it was at least over an hour before we were able to do that. And so in the interim, everyone in the country, understandably so, assumed that those binders were full of Epstein files, and they felt like we were withholding information from them. They felt like we were engaging in clickbait. They felt devastated and used when they found out there was nothing in it. And again, honestly, I'll be blunt. I totally understand why people are pissed off, because I am too about that.
I am too. I'm pissed off for you and also as a citizen of America. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think part of the thing that outrages me about this is like, okay, so basically it was a bad comms decision that led to a really significant story. I don't want to call it being overlooked, because when I posted on X last night or yesterday afternoon, I was on a plane and said, here's the real story. I mean, as of right now, I think it's been viewed by 46 million people. So, I mean, we know, I mean, these are our people on X and in the conservative media sphere, and American people, there are people, they know us, we know them, that we've been through everything together, from COVID to January 6th, to the vaccines, to the assassination attempts. They know that we're seeking the truth. They know that we are that, and I don't even know why I'm using the word we. They know that I am an honest broker. They know that I would never intentionally do this. And that's why I'm just telling this story, because the real story here is getting pushed to the side. The real story is the scandal of the SDNY. And that's the part that I actually want to focus on, because what happens from here on out is actually the important part. We have now identified that there are people trying to subvert the president from within the FBI. So what happens now? What does Kash Patel do? What does Pam Bondi do? What does President Trump do? Are those Epstein files really there? Are we going to be given those Epstein files? What happens from this moment forward actually sets the course for the rest of the administration and signals to deep staters in administrative agencies whether they can defy the president and the attorney general and the FBI director and get away with it or not.
This is open rebellion, revolution.
Yeah.
This is way beyond insubordination. I'm going to talk about this here in a minute. But there's only one thing the president can do, and I expected Pam Bondi to do something this morning. She set a deadline of 8 a.m. Well, 8 a.m. Eastern time is long gone now, and I'm wondering, is she on a plane going to New York? Are they going to begin arresting or shutting that down? You cannot play footsies with people who are defying the president of the United States and also protecting those who have committed some of the most heinous crimes. You can't do it, or you're going to lose control. My question to you is, I don't know Pam Bondi. I think I've met her a couple of times, but never, I don't have a relationship with her at all. So I don't know her. The thing that bothers me is she was on Fox the night before saying that it was sitting on her desk. She was going to release it. It wasn't everything that you were looking for, but she had read it, and you can't believe the grotesque things that have happened. The way
Did she say that? I didn't see that clip. A couple of people have mentioned that to me. Forgive the interruption. Did she say the night before that there was grotesque
the whole clip.
things
Let's get the whole thing and play it, because it is. I don't know if that's
I
my
wanna
memory
hear that,
or if that
actually.
was something that I read. I watched it in real time, and she did say it wasn't everything that you had hoped, but, and I don't remember what she said. You have the whole clip. Play it.
You said last week that you have the Epstein files on your desk. When can we see them, and what's taking so long to release them?
I do. Jesse, there are well over, this will make you sick, 200 victims. 200. So we have over 250 actually. So we have to make sure that their identity is protected and their personal information. But other than that, I think tomorrow, the personal information of victims. Other than that, I think tomorrow, Jesse, breaking news right now, you're going to see some Epstein information being released by my office.
What kind? Are we going to see who was on the flights? Are we going to see any evidence from what he recorded? Because he had all of his homes wired with recording devices.
Yeah, what you're going to see, hopefully tomorrow, is a lot of flight logs, a lot of names, a lot of information. But it's pretty sick what that man did.
Yeah. I'm going to tell you what I think is going on in Washington, what needs to be done, and use terms that I have intentionally never used before in my broadcast career. We'll address that next.
This is Glenn Beck.